let's focus on the topic for today. So, this week, focusing on identity. So, identity is a huge part of any level of success. Every time we go into that next level of success, we unlock another version of ourselves. And within that, we unlock another layer to our identity, or we're building layers to our identity. And as a business owner, we talk about identity all the time of how we show up in our business, but also for leadership, how we show up as a leader. How do we tap into being an authentic version of ourselves in life, in leadership, and in business, and also being flexible enough to be able to adapt to the situations that we're in and the people that we are working with without losing that core identity. So today I'm going to talk through 5 identity shifts that are really going to help you to become that person who gets things done, to become that person who achieves success, which is all a big part of this. And we can talk about having a business strategy, or we can talk about having leadership frameworks or things that we can use that help us to help the people that we work with. But unless we've got the mindset and the confidence to be able to deliver that, we can't be successful. We need the tools, but we also need the mindset and the confidence to be able to make it happen. And our identity is a big part of that. So what I'm going to talk through is 5 things around identity that are going to be able to help you. So these are things that you can think about straight away. They're things that are going to help to shift that thinking straight away. They're things that you can take away straight after watching this and put into practice, and it's going to make a difference. So the first thing, it's a term that we use in coaching. You may well have also heard it through CBT, but it's acting as if. It's acting as if you are already the version of you who is successful. So a big part of the identity part of the PIIPS framework is thinking about the identity, thinking about who we need to be, who we need to become to be successful at the goals that we are setting, the business that we are designing, or the leader who we want to become, or the parent or the partner that we want to be. So we need to be really clear on what that looks like. So there's different ways that we can do that. We can do that by looking at other people who are successful at what we're trying to achieve. We can also look at things that we like about ourselves that we want to either do more of or keep the same, and the things that we want to let go of, the old parts of ourselves, the old versions of ourselves that are kind of holding us back and holding us in that old space. Now, a lot of the conversations that I have with people that have come out of the public sector, we had an identity in the public sector. So a lot of people really struggle with letting go of that identity, of letting go of who they've been in the public sector. And this is something that I've shared, quite openly and in different ways over the years. When I left the police service after 20 years, I had been that collar number and that last name for 20 years, and it was so much of that was a big part of my identity. I also had parents who were in the police service and family that were in the police service. And so it becomes part of who you are. So when you leave that, there's parts of yourself that you leave behind, but there's also parts of yourself that identity that you want to keep because it works really well for you, and you want to shape it, frame it, reframe it, and bring it forward. So when we're looking at our identity in terms of the success and in terms of who we are working towards becoming, we want to think about who we are becoming in that process. And we want to act as if we are already that person. So we're starting with the end in mind. We're starting with this version of ourselves that we are working towards. And absolutely, we may not be there yet. We may be working towards that. We may see that we are making some progress, but we might not be there yet. But we need to have that really clear version of ourselves that we're working towards. We need to know what we're heading towards. We need that positive motivation, not just of what we're moving away from, but what we're moving towards. So when we've got that clear identity, when we know what it is that we want to become, who we want to be, then we can start to think, how can I become that person now? How can I make decisions? What would the future version of me say or do or choose? What decisions would they make? And then we can start to see where the old patterns of behavior are holding us back, where the older versions of us are making those decisions, making those choices, showing up in a different way. And we can start to think ahead of, okay, when I'm this new version of me, what is that going to look like? What decision would the future version of me make today? So as a business owner, we can start to think with that more CEO mindset rather than that beginner startup mindset. We can start to think with that CEO mindset of, okay, if I'm a CEO, how would I be thinking about this? How would I be making these decisions? If you're a team leader with aspirations to be a senior leader, then you can start to think about that more strategic level rather than the more tactical level. Same for business owners. What's the more strategic way of thinking versus what's the more tactical way of thinking? What would the future version of you do? As a parent or as a partner, in terms of your life goals, what would that future version of you do differently? And when we can start to bring that in, we can start to act as if we are already who we are working towards becoming, rather than faking it. It's a much more authentic way of stepping into that future version and making those decisions with that future identity in mind. And it also means we're going to evolve that identity a lot quicker. So the second thing is to think about building an identity through your small wins. So every week in the Facebook group, every week in the WhatsApp group with clients, I ask the question, what are we celebrating this week? What are your wins? Now, they will be different for different people depending on their goals. And we need to think about not just the wins that are tangible, so income wins or achievement wins. We want to think about the wins in terms of our identity. How have we shown up this week that tells us that we are getting further into this journey of who we are becoming, of this successful, high-performing person that we are working towards becoming? So every habit, every behavior, every day is a vote for who we are becoming. Every time we make a different decision based on this future version of ourselves is another vote for this step in this journey. So we want to be able to stack the evidence. Our brain needs to see the evidence that things are shifting. Our brain needs to see the evidence that we are moving forwards and we are evolving. And we know that our brain has a negative bias and it has a confirmation bias. So it's going to look for the things that didn't work, or it's going to look for the things that we feel that we failed at before it's going to look for the things that were winning for us or the things that were a success for us. So we want to make sure that we are training our brain to see these shifts starting to happen. So we want to build our identity through those small wins. We want to be able to create that routine where we check in at the end of every week to think about how we've shown up that week. How have we shown that we're becoming this identity that we're trying to shape for us? How do we show that we are evolving? So we can then stack the evidence. We can start to create that evidence. We can start to show our brain of all the ways that we are making things better, that we are making those steps of improvement, that we are taking action that aligns with this next level of who we are becoming. So that's acting as if it's building the identity, recognizing where those wins are. And then we need to check in that we let go of the old story. We cannot move forward while we are still clinging to an outdated identity. If we are still holding on to old versions of ourselves through our habits, through our behaviors, through our actions, it's going to hold us back from being this successful version of ourselves. So if you've come out of employment and you're moving into self-employment, you need to let that identity go. You need to leave that old identity of somebody who is employed, somebody who is used to having a hierarchy and processes and procedures and frameworks and legislation and laws and guidance. You need to leave that behind, because you are now the decision maker. You are now the person who gets to decide how you progress your business. You are no longer the person that is, thinking at a tactical level and doing the things that they are told to do. You are now at that strategic level where you need to think about what needs to be done, not just for today, but also in the future. You need to be thinking present and future, not just in the day-to-day detail. So we need to let go of the old story. We need to let go of old versions of ourselves that no longer are serving us for who we are today and who we want to become in the future. We can't move forward while we're clinging to an outdated identity. So think about the labels that you have for yourself. Think about how you are describing yourself. When you think about yourself or when you're talking with other people, how are you recognizing, or where are you recognizing that you are using old language, old terms of reference, old ways of thinking that is holding you in that old space? Now, one of the things quite often that happens is we end up with one foot in a new world and trying to keep one foot in an old world. It's understandable, it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's very hard to let go of sometimes, especially for those of us that have been in public sector. It is an institution, it has a very unique way, a very unique culture. For a lot of us, it's very hard to take that second step out. And even when we have physically moved out of an organization, mentally and emotionally, we can still be very much in it. So we need to check in with where we are recognizing that we are still holding on to old versions of ourselves and old identity. Roles that we've had, things that we've done, the way that things have been done, and the old beliefs that are holding us back. We need to be ready to rewrite them. So a big part of this is thinking about who we are becoming, that starting with the end in mind, thinking about that identity. What does this future version of us believe to be true that's going to help us to be the successful person in life, in leadership, in business that we want to be? What are we ready to rewrite, and what are we ready to let go of? So we need to think about the language within that as well. So we need to think about how language really reinforces who we've been, who we are now, and who we are becoming. So think about the language that you use. Shift your language into I'm trying to, or I'm new to, or I'm thinking to I am someone who. Attach your identity to your habits and your behaviors. So you're not just somebody who does this, you are the identity of someone who does this. So you're not somebody who is stepping into something that other people do. You are that person who does these things. You are a person who goes to the gym every day. You are a person who likes running, so you're not just a person who runs, you're a runner. You're not just somebody who has a side hustle, you are a business owner. The language is really powerful. Your identity is reinforced by how you speak to yourself about yourself. So think about how you're talking about yourself. You're not just a startup, you're a business owner. You might be a new business owner, but you are a business owner. You think about the language that you use. Think about how you speak to yourself about yourself, and challenge where the language is not helping, where the language might be impacting your confidence, where the language might be shifting that mindset from into that negative. So think about how you want to talk to yourself. Again, go back to that first point. If you are acting as if you are the successful business owner, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's through income or through impact, for a lot of you, it's going to be impact, but income will bring in the freedom and the flexibility that you want. What does that look like? How are you going to talk to yourself when you're earning and you've got consistent income and consistent clients, and you're working with the people that you want to work with, how are you going to be able to talk to yourself? What's going to be different then? And how can you start to introduce that now? So the fifth and final point is to decide who you are before you decide what you do. Your strategy is going to follow your identity. So one of the things I talk about a lot with the clients that I work with who are business owners, and something I've been learning myself through the coach that I work with, is what he calls the aspirational identity. Who are you working to becoming? And we've all been on this journey. We've had who we've been, who we are now, and who we are working to becoming. But we need to be really clear on our identity before we're writing the strategy, because we need to make sure that our business aligns with our values, with our philosophies, with our principles, with our ethos, our ethics, our morals. So we need to know and be really clear on who we are becoming so that we can then write the strategy. So we need to know what we're working towards. What do we want life to look like? Who are we becoming to make that work before we can then design the business that we want to happen? So I did a workshop last year on, I think it was 7 things to think about before you design a business. In fact, it's one of the workshops that are on that. I've only delivered it once, but the information is still very relevant here and now. And when you are designing a business, so for those of you who are in the very early stages, when you are designing a business, you want to be thinking about the things that you want naturally, but you also need to be really clear on the things that you don't want your business to do and who you don't want to become as a business owner, who you don't want to have to be for your business to be successful, because that then feeds into the strategy for you to design a business that's going to have that longevity, but also aligns with your values and your principles and how you want to show up. So strategy follows identity. So when you're really clear on who you are, you're going to stop chasing what's not meant for you, and you're going to be very much aligned with what is. And when we know what is meant for us, when we know what it is that we want and we know what it is that we're looking for, our brains are going to help us to see it. So this is the reticular activating system. When we're really clear on where we're going and what we're looking for, our brains are going to help us to look out for it and see it. And we're going to see those opportunities, which means we're going to be able to seize those opportunities, which means we can take action, which is going to help us to move further along that path of where we are, where we're going, and where we eventually want to be. So those are the 5 things that I truly believe if you take this away, having watched this today, if you take this away and start to implement these 5 things, so acting as if, building your identity through the small wins, so recognizing where you're doing it already, letting go of the old story and old versions of your identity, use language that reinforces who you're becoming, and decide who you are before you decide what you do, you start to implement those 5 things and you're going to see a difference straight away. In life, in leadership, in business, whatever you are wanting to be successful at or successful with, it is going to make a difference. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave you with this reflection to take away and think about. So who do you need to be this week? And how will you show up as that version of yourself? Who do you need to be this week? And how will you show up to be that version of yourself? I would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments of wherever you are watching this. If I can help you in any way, please feel free to ask. And I will look forward to hearing from you. And I will be back next week. So we've looked at planning, we've looked at intention, we've now looked at identity. And next week, we will look at performance. So I will be back then. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If I can help with anything, you know where I am. And I look forward to speaking to you all very soon.